Hello and welcome to this podcast, which is part of the content brought to you by the Automotive 30% Club's Inspiring e-zine. To find out more about e-zine and to take a look at further content, please go to www.automotive30club.co.uk/inspiring automotive women. I'm Nicola Thompson, Manager of the Inspiring Super Network, and today I will be in discussion with Jo Moxon, HR Director, and Rachel Jones, Resourcing Manager at Marshall Motor Group. Jo has over 25 years HR experience working with diverse industries including automotive, financial services, construction and engineering, retail and digital e-commerce. Rachel has been with Marshalls since April 2019, following 8 years working in Australia, much of which she worked for Service Stream as a recruitment and onboarding team leader. There are many women facing displacement following COVID-19 lockdown, and today I will be asking Jo and Rachel to share with us their advice of how they can make themselves stand out when applying for a job and what considerations they make when looking for the suitability of applicants. So thank you for joining me both today. How are you both?
Thank you.
Good. Yeah, good. It's always a bit alarming when you hear you've been at 25 years and I think surely not. I'm only 33.
I know. I'm about 25 as well. We started really young. Okay, Jo, so I thought it'd be beneficial first to hear from yourself about how Marshalls not only consider a person's CV, but also their personality, values and attitudes and how they would fit within the business.
Yeah, thanks, Nicola. So here at Marshall, we very much consider the cultural fit. It's really important to us. So we're proud of our values. And so when we're looking for people to join us, it's a real thing that we look for. So a CV can be very one-dimensional. It tells us where you've been and what you've achieved. But we want to look for examples that will enable you to really thrive in our culture. So, for example, if customers really aren't your thing, you're really not going to enjoy it at Marshall. So it's one of the things that we'll explore in the conversation with you. So we look for diverse personalities. We certainly don't want clones. We like our employees, our colleagues to match the kind of customer base that we're looking at. So difference is great and we'll really pick that out. But we look for things that we're really going to engage with the fabric of what makes Marshall special. I'm sure you've seen that we are voted as one of the great places to work. And so again, that's really important to us. So checking out these things is massive. And as I've said before, a long time in HR, and I've seen many customers spend an awful lot of money on culture change programs where they've not got it right at the beginning and then try and change and shoehorn people into way of being. What we do at Marshall is we're proud of the culture that we have. We want to get it right at the beginning so that you'll thrive and embrace the kind of values and culture that we've got.
Yeah, okay. And is it important for Marshalls that applicants have automotive experience, or do those from other industries have an equal chance?
In some roles it might be attractive if you have, but I certainly wouldn't rule it out. So one of the things that Rachel and her team are really equipped at doing is looking at those transferable skills. So I joined the automotive sector a few years ago. I'd never entertained it before, but some of the things around customer, about change were transferable. So if you have some of those transferable skills, certainly don't rule yourself out for applying for roles with us. And I think increasingly, and Rachel, you might be able to add to this, I think increasingly we get more diverse CVs from candidates outside of sector. So yeah, definitely go for it.
Okay, cool. So Rachel, across all sectors, we've seen a number of applicants for jobs rise exponentially. You're responsible for shifting through applications and CVs when they arrive at Marshalls. So can you just take us through what makes a CV stand out for you and what advice you would give to somebody who is writing their CV?
Yeah, definitely. That's definitely true, Nicola. We have seen quite a big rise in the number of applicants per vacancy over the past few months. And so it is more important than ever that your CV does stand out. Ultimately, it will actually be, I suppose, more so your interview performance that does actually get you the role, but the CV is really the avenue to getting you that interview. So you really do need to make sure it does stand out. Here at Marshall, the types of CV that would stand out to us are ones which are succinct, ones which are quite easy to read, and also ones which have a really clear intent towards the role which the individual is applying for. I suppose another thing that would make it stand out to us is any significant achievements. So perhaps if you've won a workplace award or an industry-based award, maybe being part of a talent and succession program, such as the Future Leaders program that we run here at Marshall, that type of thing will really stand out to us and make us want to pick up the phone and have that first conversation. In terms of advice, I'd say really keep it simple. As recruiters, we are quite time poor, and it's quite a small amount of time we have to review each CV. So really want to get your message across as quickly as you can to the audience. Other things that I'd say in terms of advice, really just making sure that you do think about that audience. To us, the most relevant thing will be your most recent experience. So make sure that your CV is ordered correctly. So your most recent experience is first, as that's going to be most relevant to the role you're applying for. I'd suggest putting just all the basic information for each of the roles. So make sure you've got the dates, month and year that you started, month and year that you finished. Include the employer name and also the location. And then just a few basic bullet points on some of the responsibilities that you had in the role. And then I'd also just suggest including a couple of specific achievements to that role. If possible, it's good to try and quantify these achievements. So if you can give some statistics, it will just give a bit more weight to those achievements and again, just help your CV stand out.
Okay, that's great. And just following on from that, is there a limit to the number of pages a CV should be, in your opinion?
Yeah, it's always a favourite question, that one. There's not really any right or wrong answer, and it will largely depend, I suppose, on how many years experience you have. I'd suggest anything less than about 2 pages, and you're probably not going to give us enough information to make an accurate assessment as to whether or not you are suitable. Anything more than sort of 4 pages, and it's probably not going to be read. So really just keep thinking about what's relevant, keep in the bits that are relevant, and keep out the bits which aren't.
Okay, that's great. So for you again, Rachel, when considering an applicant, does their social media activity play a key role when considering if they are suitable or not to work for Marshalls? Do you look at their social media channels, and what would you consider is unacceptable and acceptable posts?
Yeah, so personally, I don't really tend to check a candidate's social media profile, but I know that quite a few of our hiring managers do. So it's definitely something that's important to consider during your job search. Your digital footprint will portray you in a certain way, and you need to make sure that you are happy with someone seeing that and taking that into consideration when considering you for a potential job. For us, I suppose the biggest no-no would be any sort of negative commentary, either about the industry or even more specifically about your current or previous employer. That type of thing obviously wouldn't sit well with us.
Yeah. And Jo, in terms of when, people who work for Marshalls, do you look at their social media posts so you're aware of, perhaps if they put some inappropriate messaging on their channel?
Yeah, I think for me, Nicola, social media comes to our attention typically when it's not very good.
Yeah.
I don't think ever in my whole career somebody has contacted me to say, look at this profile, it's fantastic what they're doing.
Yeah.
Inevitably, by the time it gets to me, it's usually pretty damning around something that somebody might have said about somebody or involvement in things that just wouldn't be appropriate. So I think in this digital era, you just have to be so careful about what's out there and how you're portraying yourself. It really is a short window And as I say, sadly, I don't hear the good things. I only ever get to see the bad things.
Yeah, true. So just a bit more specifically then, Rachel, how important is it for people to maintain their LinkedIn profile and to be seen to be active on that platform?
Yeah, interesting question. So obviously LinkedIn, whilst it does still fall under social media, I suppose it's it's always been different from the likes of Instagram or that type of thing. I think it's really important to keep your LinkedIn profile up to date. It is a really important tool for your job search, also a really good way of sort of maintaining a network within the industry as well. If you are in a position where you're looking for a job, I definitely suggest informing your network on LinkedIn that you are currently looking. You don't know who you might know who is either hiring themselves or also who might be able to refer you to a job in the company that they're currently working in. It's quite interesting actually. Just recently we've had a number of posts where someone may have tagged me in the post, or they may have tagged another Marshall manager in the post to say someone's looking, and we've actually made a couple of hires directly through that. So it's definitely something that's worth doing. Another thing that LinkedIn can be great for is following companies which you might be interested in working for. Here at Marshall, LinkedIn is one of our main advertising platforms for our job vacancies. So make sure you are following companies which you might be interested in working in, so that firstly you can see their job posts, but also just to give you a slightly better understanding of the culture at that business and whether it might be a good cultural fit for you.
Yeah.
Another thing with LinkedIn, so as recruiters, we use the LinkedIn recruiter tool. So this allows us in the background to do a quite sort of specific search and then approach people directly who might suit the different roles that we're currently recruiting for. So it is a really good idea just to make sure your profile is up to date, to make sure you've got correct dates, you've got your employment history up to date, and also that your location's up to date. That type of thing will just help you be picked up in those LinkedIn recruiter searches and increase your chances of being approached directly. Again, a profile picture, I think it is social media, so it's important that there is, a bit of a face there. And there are some statistics around that as well with LinkedIn specifically. You are so many times more likely to be approached just by having a photo on your profile. Another thing it can be good for is sharing or creating your own content. We do sometimes get managers across Marshall Group, even as high as our CEO, Dash Gupta. He likes to sometimes send screenshots of people he may have seen on LinkedIn. So you can be noticed that way, and often we're asked to go and approach people just because someone's seen them doing something on LinkedIn which has sparked a bit of interest. So definitely a really good way to sort of build your personal brand and help your job search.
Yeah, and I think listening to you just reiterate how important it is to somebody looking for a job. Hearing, and I've seen how you've used it to recruit people recently, being really proactive on it.
Yeah, we try to be.
Yeah, okay. So Jo, how do you think applicants can be more proactive in putting themselves out there, making it known that they're in the market for a job?
And I think this is a point where there's probably a collective groan at what I'm going to say next, but it is about networking. So Rachel's given some great top tips on using LinkedIn, but networking is absolutely invaluable in terms of extending your reach. Looking for a job often feels like a full-time job in itself, so treat it like one. Do your research on organisations, find out who's who. I'm still surprised sometimes that I'll get letters or emails sent, "Dear Sir / Madam, I'm really interested in a job in your organisation." And a quick look on LinkedIn will tell you who I am, and making it personal is really important. So do your research, find out who's who. My best friend runs a social media company, And it's normally to business clients wanting to promote their business. But more frequently now, she's being contacted from people looking for job search. So this is about how people are using the tools and mechanisms around them to start to really market themselves. So get involved in charities, broadening your circle, becoming governors, or offering free work to get noticed and extend your reach is often invaluable. And it's that old adage of it's not just what you know, it's who you know. And on a personal note, it was a few years ago now, I was at an event, Dash was speaking, and after the event I made a point of going and introducing myself to Dash, and then it was a couple of years later we linked in, and a couple of years later he did something and I made a comment on an activity that he'd done that led to a coffee, that led to meeting the rest of the exec team, and hey presto, here I am today. And it was as a result of an initial hello and an introduction. So sometimes you have to take yourself a bit out of your comfort zone. I've seen a lot of people that go, oh yeah, but that's not me, I'm not a networker. And I think sometimes it's taking that bravery pill, putting yourself out there and going to talk and introduce yourself to these people. It really makes such a big difference.
And actually using a platform like LinkedIn to network it's a soft way to do it, isn't it? For those that, don't have the confidence to go and speak to somebody one-on-one, it's a good way to introduce themselves.
Yeah, definitely. And you can find out, if you've got a target of wanting to speak to somebody, you can then look at who that person's connected with. And you might know somebody already in your network, which is a second connection, and you can start to weave around about how you might want to approach that person differently. Look at the kind of groups that person's involved in. Who do they network with? And look at how you might join some of the same networking groups as well. It's much easier now than it used to be a few years ago, when it wasn't as socially acceptable to e-meet as we do today.
No, definitely. It's getting a lot easier, isn't it? And more accessible, definitely.
Yeah.
So obviously the feeling of rejection, a lot of people have to deal with when applying for jobs. How can this be turned into something positive, do you think, Jo?
So I think rejection is all about perspective, and do you know what? It hurts because we're human. Nobody wants to have those feelings. Your pride's a bit battered. Nobody wants you, and there's a real temptation to start to listen to the little voice that says, "Oh, you're rubbish. You're never going to get a job. You're not good enough. You're at the back of the." And you know what? If you listen to that voice, Nicola, it will take over your world, and you'll start to believe the voice. So in this market in particular, it's tough out there. There are so many more applicants for jobs now. So get realistic early on. The chances are that you will experience rejection. So be prepared for it. There's so much stuff now on the internet about resilience, about coping with rejection, about how do you pick yourself back up and keep going. So invest some time in being prepared for what might be an inevitability. So that as and when it does happen, you've got some things up your sleeve that you can go back that's going to stop you from listening to the little voice that tells you that you're not good enough. On a practical note, every time you might experience some rejection, really find out why. So ask for feedback, seek feedback on why that might be the case. And to help you feel more confident during interviews, practice on your friends, practice with your family, and get them to help critique you. Get used to hearing some things that you might want to do better next time. And finally, just to reiterate the point, be kind to yourself. It's probably not been this tough in the last 10 years as it is now. This time will pass, it will get better, you will secure your next job. So don't beat yourself up. Be prepared for it, do some reading, equip yourself to cope with rejection, turn down the little voice and just believe this time will end. It will get better.
Yeah, and there is the job out there for you as well, isn't it?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah.
Things happen for the right reasons.
Yeah.
Definitely. Yeah. So just finally, Jo, I'd just like to touch on the evidence that states that men apply for a job when they meet only 60% of the qualifications, but women only apply if they meet 100% of them. What's your thoughts on this statement?
I think there's a more than a grain of truth in it, if I'm honest, Nicola. And I know, early in my career, that certainly applied to me. And if it wasn't for my manager pushing me, when I gave him every reason why I wouldn't go for that promotion, if he'd not have been there pushing me and saying, yeah, you might not have done that one thing, but what about X, Y, and Z that you have done? I probably wouldn't be sat in this seat today. So I went along for the interview, and lo and behold, I got the job. But I needed that encouragement to get there. And so I think there is certainly some truth in it. I recently interviewed someone for they'd applied for a role as a receptionist. It was a great job. And in interviewing her for a receptionist, I started to ask some questions. That she had 3 children under 5. She'd managed the building of her own house, and she was involved in some charity work. She was a school governor, and she'd done all of these things. And we had a project manager role at the same time, and I asked her why she wasn't applying for the project manager position, and she said, "Oh, I've not got a qualification, or I've never really managed anything." And when I played back to her all of the things that on a daily basis she's project managing, suddenly it was like, oh God, I never thought about it like that. I never thought about transferable skills, and that I might not have exactly what it says, but actually I've got more than I can offer, more than the job is demanding, because I can offer X, Y, and Z. And we hired her as a project manager, and she later went on to study and got a degree in project management. But she didn't see the value of her experience and how she might use that to secure a career.
Yeah.
So go for it. Now's the time to put our big girl pants on, be brave, and go out. And I think it links a little bit back to what I said about rejection, and it hurts.
Yeah.
But get the feedback, get the experience, take a deep breath, and go for it.
Yeah.
I think we've got a lot more to offer than what we probably believe in ourselves.
No, definitely. And I suppose it's a bit like what I always say to my kids, they can only say no. It's not the end of the world, but just put yourself out there, because you are capable.
Absolutely.
So much more than you believe in yourself. And it's only by pushing yourself that I think that does help build your confidence as well.
It does. And it links to an earlier point that we were talking about, networking.
Yeah.
So that might not be the job for you, but you've left a brilliant impression. And the next time that a role comes up, the conversation is, Rachel, can you remember that candidate that we had that did X, Y, and Z? And that's the more you put yourself out there and push your boundaries, the more you'll get noticed for all of the right reasons. So and you won't get noticed if you stay in your comfort zone, I think.
Yeah. I think that's especially true of the automotive industry. I've been in it for 25 years, and you always know somebody who knows somebody you worked with. People do move around in this industry.
Oh, massively.
And they always come back into your life later down the line. Yeah,
they do. And there's some fantastic people in our industry that will champion people coming in as well, that wants to give opportunities to those that have got that desire, that passion, and that aspiration to get on. There's some great people in our industry that will help other people.
Yeah.
So go for it. Take the bravery pill and go for it.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, well, it's been great to speak to you both today and listening to the valuable advice that you've shared with us. Thank you for being encouraging, informative, and motivational throughout this podcast. I know that there'll be listeners out there that will have found it of great interest and help. So thank you very much.
You're very welcome. It's a pleasure.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you. So don't forget, if you want to find out more about the Inspiring Automotive Women Network and want to join our community, please go to www.automotive30club.co.uk/inspiring automotive women. Here you can also access the e-zine magazine, where you will find articles and interviews relevant to all women who work in the automotive industry and its larger community. We would also love to hear from you. Perhaps you would like to provide feedback on this podcast or offer suggestions on what subject matters you would like to hear more on. Finally, thank you for joining us today, and we look forward to you joining us next time. Thank you.